Captain Hyan walked into the big white meeting room on the giant space station. His blue skin looked shiny under the bright lights. The room was huge and round like a circle. Around the big table sat soldiers from 12 different alien worlds. All of them had fought against the strange beings called Americans and lived to tell about it. The air felt heavy with fear and worry. Commander Nari stood up tall. She looked like a big lizard with green scales and yellow eyes. She pressed a button, and a magic picture appeared in the air above the table. The picture showed spaceships and planets and numbers that made everyone scared. "We are here to talk about Earth, people," Nari said in a loud voice that echoed around the room. Her words bounced off the walls like a ball. "After 3 big fights where we lost, the Galactic Council wants answers. How did these Earth humans beat our best space fleets? They only learned to fly between stars 50 years ago. We have been doing this for thousands of years." Lieutenant Do-hyun moved in his chair. He looked like a giant bug with 4 arms and big black eyes. His hands shook a little when he started to talk. His bug mouth made clicking sounds before he spoke. "My team was the first to meet American soldiers at Mars Colony," he said. "They do not fight like any alien race we know about. When we put our ships around their base, we thought they would give up. Instead, they started playing very loud music and ran straight at our big metal war machines. They were screaming about something called freedom." The room became very quiet. Everyone looked at each other with worried faces. Sergeant Minho leaned forward on the table. His body was made of clear crystal like glass, but it had burn marks from plasma weapons. "My soldiers heard their radio talk during the Europa battle. He said their fighters were telling jokes while our biggest ships were shooting at them from space. One human said this was just another Tuesday when our planet killer ships started bombing them. They acted like this giant, deadly battle was just a fun game, Commander." Nari pushed another button. The magic picture changed to show a real battle from the Jupiter moons. Everyone watched as American soldiers did something that had never happened before in all of galactic history. The humans had talked to 3 different enemy alien armies during the middle of fighting and made them switch sides. The report called this aggressive friendship and tactical gift-giving. One human Marine traded his food pack for a whole squadron of alien fighter ships. Intelligence Officer Soyeon stood up. Her people were famous for being able to control minds and read thoughts. She looked very confused and scared. The mind war part is very important. She said Americans put their movies and TV shows on all radio channels while fighting. Their entertainment is so happy and violent at the same time that it makes enemy soldiers confused. Several of our best pilots asked to join. The humans, after watching something called Top Gun, during a rest break in the fighting Captain Hyan, looked at all the evidence on the magic display. His 3 eyes moved back and forth as he read report after report from the Titan ice mines to the asteroid belt battles. The same pattern showed up everywhere. Americans did not just win fights, they made their enemies want to become friends with them. Major Kaiwan had been quiet until now, but he finally spoke up. His rock-like skin was gray and hard like stone. "I was at the Battle of Ganymede Station," he said. "We had them surrounded completely. No way out. Our computers said they would surrender in 10 minutes. Instead, they sent us a message. It was not a surrender, it was an invitation to join them for something called a barbecue after the fight was over. They said they would teach us how to make hamburgers." The room buzzed with confused talking. Everyone had similar stories. Americans who offered to share technology in the middle of battles, Americans who asked about alien families while shooting at them, Americans who somehow made war feel like a friendly competition instead of life and death. Dr. Chae-young entered the room carrying a big pile of papers and data pads. She was the best alien mind doctor in the galaxy. Her tentacles moved quickly as she set down her research. "I have studied their brain patterns," she announced. "What I found makes no sense by any rule we know. These humans have broken every law of how smart beings should act in war." She activated her own display, showing colorful pictures of human brains during battle. The colors swirled and moved in patterns that looked impossible. Most species show fear when facing death. She explained, the fear makes them either run away or fight desperately. But Americans show something different. When things get more dangerous, they actually get happier and more confident. Lieutenant Colonel Byung-gyu nodded his big furry head. He looked like a giant bear. But with purple fur and 6 legs, I monitored human vital signs during the New Houston siege. Their heart rates went up like normal. But instead of panic, they entered what they call the zone. They started making better choices, not worse ones. The more we attacked them, the smarter they became at fighting back. The evidence kept piling up like a mountain. Intelligence reports showed that captured Americans did not break under questioning. Instead, they tried to convince their captors that democracy was better than empire. They explained why freedom was important while sitting in prison cells. They turned interrogation sessions into political discussions. The meeting had been going for hours, but nobody wanted to leave. The mystery of the Americans was too important to ignore. These were not normal warriors. This was something completely new in the galaxy, a species that had turned war into friendship and conquest into cooperation. Commander Nari looked around the table at all the confused and worried faces. We need to understand them, she said, before they understand us too well. Because if these reports are true, Americans are not just winning battles, they are changing the entire galaxy, one fight at a time, and we might not be able to stop them. Colonel Yun-ho stood in front of a giant magic picture that showed when aliens first met Americans. His 3 eyes looked at all the information, and he felt more worried every second. Every rule we followed made everything worse. He told the other officers, standard Galactic way is to show we have better technology, make them scared, then talk about deals. Americans thought our scary displays were challenges to fight. The first big mistake happened when Ambassador Jisoo brought her huge spaceship to Earth's moon. She turned off some of their satellites to show how powerful aliens were. This was supposed to make humans afraid and want to surrender. Instead, the Americans shot everything they had at the alien ship, including atomic bombs. At the same time, they sent radio messages asking if the aliens wanted to grab a beer and talk about it. They attacked us and tried to be friends at the same time, Jisoo said, shaking her head. She was still confused many months later. Our culture experts spent weeks trying to understand how one species could be mean and nice at the same time. When we finally agreed to have peace talks, they brought guns to the meeting, but they also brought food to share with us. Major Kiwan was there during the famous cultural exchange incident at the United Nations building on Earth. He remembered every detail like it happened yesterday. They brought their leader's representative to talk, but she spent the whole meeting asking questions about our biology and our home planets. She wanted to know if we had ever tried something called pizza. When we showed them our advanced energy weapons, she asked if they could be changed to cook food faster. The big understanding came when Captain Tae-hyung realized something important. Americans did not see better technology as something scary to fear. They saw it as a puzzle to solve or a tool to make better. They kept asking how everything worked, not in a scared way, but like engineers looking at a new machine. One of their scientists drew improvements to our plasma guns right on the pages of the peace treaty while we were signing it. But the real surprise came during the big fancy dinner. The Americans had made food from dozens of different Earth cultures. They explained that America was made of people who came from everywhere else on their planet. They were not just speaking for one tribe, Yun-ho realized. They were speaking for the idea of taking the best parts of everywhere else and mixing them together. That's why our normal diplomatic ways failed completely. Major Siwon had been the cultural attaché during those early meetings. He watched as Americans did something no other species had ever done. They treated the peace negotiations like a party. They brought their families to meet the alien diplomats. They took pictures together. They exchanged gifts, not as formal ceremony, but like friends meeting friends. The Americans kept asking personal questions about alien families and hobbies. They wanted to know what aliens did for fun on their home worlds. They shared stories about human children and showed pictures of their pets. They acted like meeting aliens was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to them instead of being afraid. During the technology demonstration, the Americans did not gasp in fear when they saw alien weapons. Instead, they applauded like they were watching a magic show. They asked if they could try using the alien tools. They wanted to know if alien technology could help solve human problems like hunger and disease. They were more interested in helping people than in the weapons ambassador. Jisoo remembered the moment everything changed. A young American scientist named Jake had been looking at their faster-than-light engine. He suddenly got very excited and started drawing pictures. He showed how human mathematical theories could make the alien engine work even better. The alien engineers were amazed that these primitive humans could improve their ancient technology. The cultural exchange had ended in ways nobody planned. 3 alien ambassadors asked to stay on Earth to study human engineering methods. 2 human scientists got invited to visit alien research centers. A formal military alliance got created that nobody had intended, but everyone somehow agreed was a good idea. But the most shocking discovery came from the psychological profiles. Dr. Miyun presented her findings to the group. Americans do not have a normal fear response to the unknown, she explained. When most species meet something new, they either run away or try to destroy it. Americans get curious, they want to understand it, make friends with it, and probably invite it to dinner. The first contact. Disasters had not been disasters at all. Colonel Yunho finally understood. They had been the most successful diplomatic missions in galactic history. The Americans had not just made peace with alien visitors, they had made them want to stay and become part of the human community. The humans had turned invasion into immigration. Dr. Chae-young turned down the lights in the science room. Her tentacles moved smoothly over the controls as she brought up pictures of human brains from captured soldiers. What we found goes against every rule of how smart beings should think, she told the group of military scientists. The brain pictures showed humans during fighting situations. The patterns made no sense according to everything aliens knew about psychology. When most species face too many enemies, they get scared and either fight hard or run away. Dr. Chae-young explained, Americans seem to have evolved a third-choice fight and have fun doing it. Lieutenant Colonel Beom-gyu was a veteran who had fought in the Titan campaign. He nodded his big head grimly. Their soldiers actually get better when things get worse. We watched their body signs during the siege of New Houston. Their hearts beat faster, but instead of panic, they went into what they call the zone. They started making smarter war choices, not dumber ones. Most disturbing evidence came from questioning captured humans. Unlike other species who usually told military secrets when threatened or offered rewards, Americans tried to convert their prison guards to their way of thinking. Prisoner 847 spent 6 hours explaining why democracy was better than our empire system. Chief Interrogator Jimin reported. By the end of the session, 2 of my guards were taking notes about human government. Captain Hyuna had seen the legendary shopping mall incident. On Proxima Station, human civilians, not even soldiers, had been trapped in a shopping area during an alien attack. Instead of hiding or giving up, they made weapons from store items and organized a fighting group using knowledge from their movies and TV shows. They treated a life-or-death situation like they had been training for it their whole lives through watching entertainment. Hyuna reported with disbelief. Major Seok-jin had watched human medics during the Battle of Europa's third moon. He saw something that made no sense to alien minds. They risk everything to save hurt friends, but they also celebrate soldiers who die fighting as heroes. They have somehow stopped being afraid of death by making it meaningful. A soldier who knows his death will be remembered and honored fights differently than one who fears being forgotten. The psychological profile that came together painted a picture of a species that had turned optimism into a weapon. They had made competition work like cooperation. They had convinced themselves that impossible odds just made winning more fun. They do not fight to stay alive. Dr. Cheong concluded, they fight because they believe their way of living is worth spreading to the universe intelligence. Officer Neon had been studying American entertainment media for months. She discovered that Americans practiced fighting aliens through their movies and games before they ever met real aliens. They have thousands of stories about meeting other species, she reported. Most of these stories end with humans and aliens becoming friends. They literally trained their whole population to expect friendship with us. The brain studies showed something even more strange. When Americans got scared or angry, the parts of their brains that handle creativity and problem-solving became more active, not less. Most species become stupid when afraid Americans become more creative. The worse their situation gets, the more likely they are to think of new solutions. Dr. Sunho had analyzed American military training videos. He found that Americans taught their soldiers to think of enemies as future friends who just did not understand American values yet. They train for war, but they also train for peace. At the same time, every American soldier learns how to fight and how to help rebuild after fighting. They prepare to destroy things and to fix them. Captain Da-Yun had been present during several American prisoner exchanges. She witnessed something. Unprecedented. Americans who had been captured and tortured by alien forces still tried to help their former captors after being freed. One human pilot whose ship had been shot down spent his rescue time teaching alien mechanics how to repair their damaged systems better. The studies revealed that Americans had somehow evolved past normal survival instincts. Instead of just trying to live, they tried to make life better for everyone around them. They treated war not as destruction, but as a way to spread their ideas about freedom and friendship. This made them incredibly dangerous because they fought not just with weapons, but with hope. Major Young-ho had commanded defenses during the Battle of Ceres Station. He watched as American forces did something no military academy taught. They started offering surrender terms to aliens that were better than the aliens' original demands. They would defeat enemy positions, then offer the defeated soldiers better jobs in the American space fleet. Final discovery was the most troubling. Americans did not see other species as enemies to defeat, but as problems to solve. They approached every alien they met with the assumption that they could eventually become friends. This assumption proved correct so often that it had become their main military strategy. Dr. Cheong finished her report with a warning. We are not fighting a normal military force. We are fighting an entire species that has weaponized friendship itself. General Wu Jin turned on the combat simulation room. The walls changed into a three-dimensional picture of the Battle of Asteroid Belt. 7 military strategists from all over the galaxy watched in shocked silence as the fight played out exactly like it had happened 6 months ago. Standard galactic warfare rules emphasize superior firepower, defensive positions, and overwhelming numbers. The general explained Americans ignore all of these rules and somehow win through methods we cannot understand or classify. The simulation showed the moment when outnumbered human forces did something unprecedented. They split their already small fleet into even smaller groups and attacked from 17 different directions, all at the same time. No military academy in the galaxy teaches this strategy because it violates basic survival logic. Admiral Sungmin noted, dividing your forces against a bigger enemy should result in total defeat. But the humans coordinated their chaotic attack with perfect timing, using what they called controlled improvisation. Each small group adapted their tactics in real time based on enemy responses, while somehow keeping overall strategic unity. They were following a plan while making it up as they went along. Observed Colonel Yuna, still confused by the contradiction. The tactical innovations went beyond space combat. During ground fighting, Americans had pioneered aggressive diplomacy, literally fighting their way to enemy command centers, for the purpose of starting peace talks. They would defeat our outer defenses, capture our communication systems, then use them to call us and ask if we wanted to surrender or keep fighting. Reported Major Hoseok, who had commanded the defense of Mining Station 12 Most. Disturbing was their approach to supplies. While Galactic military doctrine emphasized secure supply lines and backup systems, Americans treated lack of resources as a creative challenge. They have developed technology on the battlefield using broken enemy equipment. Intelligence Officer Neon revealed. During the siege of New Bermuda, they built a communications array out of destroyed alien fighter parts and debris from their own ships. The psychological impact on enemy forces was equally revolutionary. Americans had somehow turned warfare into performance art, broadcasting messages to opposing fleets that combined military ultimatums with cultural education. They would demand surrender while simultaneously explaining why their democracy was superior, and offering to share technological innovations that would benefit everyone. Reported communication specialist Irene Captain Youngwon had witnessed the most baffling American innovation during the Battle of the Iron Nebula. Human forces had actually improved alien technology captured during the fight and sent the blueprints back to their enemies with a note suggesting friendly competition in engineering excellence. They turned military superiority into a collaborative science project, he reported, still shaking his head in disbelief. Major Taeyong had been analyzing American logistics for months. He discovered that Americans treated war like a giant engineering project. They did not just plan to win battles, they planned to rebuild everything. They destroyed better than it was before. During the liberation of Kepler Colony, they brought construction equipment along with their weapons. They started repairing damage while the fighting was still happening. The Americans had also revolutionized. Battlefield medicine Dr. Su Yung reported that human medics did not just treat their own wounded. They treated enemy casualties with the same level of care. Several alien soldiers who had been injured fighting Americans reported that human medical teams saved their lives, then offered them jobs in American space colonies. Captain Minsok had observed American forces during the siege of Alpha Centauri Station. The humans did something no other species had ever attempted. They conducted military operations and diplomatic negotiations simultaneously. They would capture an enemy position, then immediately hold elections to let the defeated aliens choose their own new government. The innovation that confused aliens most was American approach to victory. They did not seem to want traditional conquest. Instead, they wanted what they called liberation. They fought to free aliens from their own governments rather than to rule over them. Major Jihyo had commanded alien forces during 3 different battles against Americans. Each time after defeat, the Americans had offered her better living conditions and more personal freedom than she had under her original empire. Intelligence analysis showed that Americans had completely redefined military objectives. While other species fought for territory, resources, or dominance, Americans fought for abstract concepts like freedom, democracy, and individual rights. These ideas proved more powerful than traditional military goals because they appealed directly to individual soldiers, regardless of species. Colonel Sungjin presented the most disturbing tactical analysis. Americans do not fight against enemy armies, he concluded. They fight for enemy soldiers. They try to convince each individual alien that life would be better under American-style democracy. This turns every battle into a recruitment campaign rather than a destruction campaign. The tactical innovations extended to space naval combat. Admiral Hayeri had commanded the defense fleet during the Battle of Proxima Nebula. She watched as American ships used a formation no computer could calculate. They flew in patterns that looked random but created perfect crossfire zones while also spelling out messages of friendship in alien languages when viewed from above. Even more shocking was American approach to captured territory. Instead of occupying conquered worlds with military forces, they immediately began construction projects to improve infrastructure. They built schools, hospitals, and communication networks. They gave defeated populations better technology and more food than they had under their previous rulers. General Wu Jin concluded his presentation with a warning: "We are not fighting a traditional military. Force Americans have created a new form of warfare where victory means making your enemies grateful that you defeated them. They have weaponized improvement itself. Every battle they win makes the galaxy a little more like America. And most terrifying of all, this strategy appears to be working perfectly." Professor Mayan stood in front of the Cultural Analysis Division biggest screen. The display showed what intelligence agencies across the galaxy had decided was humanity's most dangerous weapon: their entertainment industry, the group of alien. Scientists who study culture stared at the information with growing worry as they understood how far American culture had spread. Within 18 months of first contact, American cultural products had reached 47 different worlds, she reported. But this was not planned cultural imperialism. They were genuinely confused when other species started copying their customs. They thought they were just sharing things they enjoyed. The phenomenon had started innocently enough. During diplomatic meetings, humans would casually mention their movies, music, and television shows. Alien diplomats who were trained to study everything for strategic advantage had examined these cultural products and found something unprecedented humans had created. Fictional scenarios covering almost every possible situation, including first contact with alien species. Their entertainment media functions as a training manual for handling new situations, explained cultural analyst Mingy. They have literally practiced scenarios through fiction that other species could not imagine until they happened. When real events occur, humans respond as if they have already experienced them. But the cultural impact went far beyond preparation. Dr. Sunmi had studied the psychological effects of human music on various alien species. Their musical compositions trigger emotional responses that bypass normal species barriers. We have documented cases of beings from completely different evolutionary backgrounds experiencing what humans call getting pumped up when hearing their battle songs. The most dramatic example had occurred during the diplomatic summit on Kepler Station. Ambassador Jae-hyun had been negotiating a standard trade agreement when he casually mentioned that one of the alien species reminded him of characters from something called Star Trek. The alien delegates had demanded to see this reference, leading to an impromptu cultural exchange that lasted 3 days and resulted in a military alliance nobody had planned. They have weaponized friendship, reported social dynamics specialist Rose. Americans assumed that any intelligent species would naturally want to be friends once they got to know each other. This assumption proves correct so often that it has become a military strategy. The cultural contamination had reached critical levels when human social media platforms had been translated for galactic use. Alien species across the galaxy had begun sharing memes, participating in viral challenges, and engaging in something humans called social networking. They have turned communication itself into entertainment, observed. Dr. Jenny still struggling to understand the implications. But perhaps most disturbing was the philosophical impact: human concepts of individual rights, democratic decision-making, and cultural diversity had begun spreading through galactic society like a benevolent virus. They are not conquering other species, Professor Millon concluded grimly. They are accidentally converting them to their worldview through the simple act of being friendly. Major Yoongi had been stationed at the Cultural Exchange Center on New Geneva Station. He watched as alien visitors experienced human entertainment for the first time. A group of warrior aliens from the Rigel system had requested to watch human war movies, expecting to see battle tactics. Instead, they spent 3 hours crying during a film called Saving Private Ryan because they had never seen soldiers portrayed as individuals with families and fears rather than just weapons. The contamination spread through every form of media. Captain Seoyeon reported that alien children across 12 different star systems had begun playing games based on human children. shows they were learning human values like sharing cooperation and individual expression through entertainment designed for human 5-year-olds. The philosophical implications were staggering. Dr. Hyunwoo had analyzed the linguistic impact of cultural exchange. Human languages, especially English, had begun influencing alien communication patterns. Aliens were adopting human concepts that had no equivalent in their original languages. Words like privacy, personal choice, and individual rights were being borrowed wholesale because the concepts had never existed in alien societies. The most powerful weapon in the American cultural arsenal was something they called democracy. Ambassador Sun Woo had observed 17 different alien civilizations undergo political transformation after exposure to human governmental concepts. They do not impose their system by force, he reported. They just explain how it works and let people decide if they want to try it. Most do Lieutenant Seoho had been present. During the infamous parliamentary incident on Vega Prime, the local alien government had invited human advisors to explain democratic processes to help them understand their new human allies. Instead, the alien population had demanded immediate governmental reform after learning that they could choose their own leaders. The revolution had been completely peaceful, but the entire political system had changed overnight. The cultural warfare extended to technology and science. Professor Boyoung had tracked how human approaches to innovation were spreading through alien research communities. Americans treated scientific discovery as a collaborative effort rather than a competitive one. They shared research freely and encouraged other species to improve on their work. This approach was so effective that alien scientists had begun adopting human methods even when not working with humans. The economic impact was equally dramatic. Human concepts of free market capitalism mixed with social safety nets had begun influencing alien trade system. Species that had operated on strict resource allocation for millennia were experimenting with human-style economics that allowed for individual choice and opportunity. Captain Woo Young presented. The final piece of evidence: human holidays and celebrations were being adopted by alien cultures across the galaxy. Christmas, Halloween, and Thanksgiving were being celebrated on worlds that had never heard of Earth 2 years earlier. They have made their culture so appealing that other species volunteer to adopt it. He concluded. Professor Mion ended her presentation with a warning that chilled every alien in the room. We are witnessing the most successful cultural conquest in galactic history. Americans are not forcing their values on anyone. They are simply living according to their beliefs and letting others observe the results. The results are so appealing that voluntary conversion is inevitable. We are not being invaded, are being inspired. And inspiration may be the most powerful weapon of all, and television shows. Alien diplomats, trained to analyze everything for strategic advantage, had studied these cultural products and discovered something unprecedented. Humans had created fictional scenarios covering almost every possible situation, including first contact with alien species. Their entertainment media functions as a training manual for handling novel situations, explained cultural analyst Mingy. They've literally practiced scenarios through fiction that other species couldn't imagine until they happened. When real events occur, humans respond as if they've already experienced them. But the cultural impact extended far beyond preparation. Dr. Sunmi had studied the psychological effects of human music on various alien species. Their musical compositions trigger emotional responses that bypass normal species barriers. We've documented cases of beings from completely different evolutionary backgrounds experiencing what humans call getting pumped up when hearing their battle songs. The most dramatic example had occurred during the diplomatic summit on Kepler Station. Ambassador Jae-hyun had been negotiating a standard trade agreement when he had casually mentioned that one of the alien species reminded him of characters from something called Star Trek. The alien delegates had demanded to see this reference, leading to an impromptu cultural exchange that lasted 3 days and resulted in a military alliance nobody had planned. They've weaponized friendship, reported social dynamics specialist Rosé. Americans assumed that any intelligent species would naturally want to be friends once they got to know each other. This assumption proves correct so often that it's become a military strategy. The cultural contamination had reached critical levels when human social media platforms had been translated for galactic use. Alien species across the galaxy had begun sharing memes, participating in viral challenges, and engaging in something humans called social networking. They've turned communication itself into entertainment, observed Dr. Jenny, still struggling to understand the implications. But perhaps most disturbing was the philosophical impact. Human concepts of individual rights, democratic decision-making, and cultural diversity had begun spreading through galactic society like a benevolent virus. They're not conquering other species, Professor Millon concluded grimly. They're accidentally converting them to their worldview through the simple act of being friendly. Fleet Admiral Tai Yang called the emergency session to order as representatives from every major galactic power gathered in the Grand Assembly Chamber, the massive dome filled with beings from hundreds of different worlds, all united by a single, terrifying realization about the species called Americans. After 2 years of analysis, we have reached our conclusion, the Admiral announced, his voice echoing across the vast chamber. Americans are not the most feared species in the galaxy because of their military capabilities, though these are formidable. They are feared because they represent something we have never encountered before, a species that weaponized hope itself. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Chief Strategic Analyst Yunji presented the final report to the Assembly. Americans don't fight to destroy their enemies, they fight to convert them. Every battle they win creates more allies rather than more fear. This represents a complete paradigm shift in how conquest operates. The revelation had come through studying long-term patterns rather than individual engagements. Ambassador Hisung had noticed that former enemy species weren't just neutralized after conflicts with Americans, they became active supporters of human expansion. They've achieved something we considered impossible, sustainable galactic conquest through friendship. But the deeper truth was more disturbing. Dr. Sungyan had analyzed the psychological profiles of every species that had encountered Americans. They don't just defeat enemies. They make enemies want to become better versions of themselves. Human democracy isn't just a political system, it's a contagious philosophy that spreads to any species exposed to it. The military implications were staggering. General Min Young presented tactical analysis, showing that traditional concepts of victory and defeat no longer applied when fighting Americans. They've redefined winning as achieving a state where everyone involved benefits. This makes them literally impossible to defeat using conventional military doctrine because they turn every encounter into a mutually beneficial outcome. The final piece of the puzzle came from long-term sociological studies. Professor Ewan had tracked social changes in species that had fought Americans decades earlier. Every society that has encountered them has eventually adopted modified versions of human governmental systems, human approaches to individual rights, and human methods of conflict resolution. They're not just militarily superior, they're evolutionarily superior. Admiral Tai Yang rose for his final pronouncement. The reason Americans are the most feared species in the galaxy is not because they will destroy us. It's because they will convince us to become more like them. And we will discover that we prefer it that way. They've created a form of conquest where the conquered thank their conquerors for the privilege. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had achieved something no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had made improvement of the galaxy itself, their military objective. They weren't just expanding their territory, they were expanding their values, their optimism, and their belief that every intelligent species deserved freedom and dignity. The recommendation of this assembly, Admiral Taeyang concluded, is immediate and unconditional alliance with the American species. If we cannot defeat them, and if resistance only results in becoming more like them, then our best strategy is to embrace the process voluntarily. At least this way, we can negotiate favorable terms for our own cultural transformation. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, an entire interstellar civilization had formally surrendered not to superior firepower, but to superior idealism. The Americans, when informed of this decision, responded by inviting everyone to a galaxy-wide barbecue to celebrate new friendships and discuss collaborative space exploration projects. Even in victory, they had somehow made it about bringing people together.